what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, pleased to be joined by fellow lifetime Longhorn, the young prodigy CJ Vogel, and the newest member of the On Texas Football family, my friend and now co-worker, the one and only Jeff Howe, joining us as well. It's time for our position previews. We're on the defensive side of the ball now. We did defensive ends last time. We're going to go defensive tackles this time. Look at the interior D line for Texas, and of course, this position preview brought to you by our latest and newest sponsor, Von Lane. All right, we'll tell you a little bit about Von Lane coming up later on in the broadcast, but I've actually got a chance to ride the Von Lane to Houston and to Dallas. Big fan of it. Glad they're a member of the On Texas Football family. But gentlemen, let's get right to it. We got the defensive tackle position we're breaking down here, and I got to tell you, from talking to Longhorn fans, and, just looking at all the different positions and the expectations for different positions and the projections, look like there's more anxiety, probably for 2 years in a row now, more anxiety about the interior D line than any other position on the defensive side of the football. And understandably so, right? You're losing not only Bill Norton and Jermaine Lole, but you're losing Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins as well. Those guys eligibility up through the transfer portal. You're losing guys like Sadir Mitchell, Tia Savea, Aaron Bryant, Jere Bledsoe. A lot of talent and also a lot of experience lost in the interior D line, either through exhausted eligibility or the transfer portal. And you're bringing in some guys, bringing in a Cole Brevard, bringing in Travis Shaw via the transfer portal, Hero Canoe as well. And you got some young guys that you're bringing up in this latest recruiting class. The truth is, this is one of the most inexperienced positions on the team right now. There's a lot to prove for this interior D-line group. I'll throw it to you first, CJ. What are your thoughts just about the state of the interior D-line for Texas?
Yeah, I think what you mentioned there, Rod, was actually probably the biggest takeaway of all of this defensive line stuff. Beyond Jermaine Lole, Bill Norton departing, seeing Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton go to the NFL draft, but Jere Bledsoe, Aaron Bryant, two guys that were going to be moving into year 3 here at the University of Texas. Sadir Mitchell, another guy who had already been in the program for an offseason or two, had already been through a season with the team. Those 3 departures are huge because that's kind of the backbone of this unit, right? Of course, Texas has already gone out and added a few pieces. They're expecting a big jump from Alex January, and they brought in a great recruiting class. But there still needs to be some filling there, right? Some guys that we talked about last year at other positions, whether it be a David Benda, whether it be a Mo Blackwell, or a guy out wide at cornerback. And look, like Gavin Holmes, right? You got to have guys just like that to fill in some of those key snaps where maybe it's not a do or die situations, on the field per se, but you got to have guys that eat up snaps and allow your A1, top tier guys to catch a breather at some point. And right now, that's the big question mark. Does Texas have enough of those guys? Because otherwise, you look at what they brought in and you feel like they'll be able to put in pretty solid product on the field. Will it be elite? Will it be in that category that we've seen over the last 2 years? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, I'm not worried. I'm honestly not worried about the depth so much as I am, Rod, one term we've used, you brought it up, and I love it, and I've borrowed it from you for years now. Every Texas defense worth its salt has had, as you put it, that rock of Gibraltar, that stud in the middle that you can count on. I mean, it goes back to your time where you're talking about Casey Hampton, Sean Rogers, Rod Wright, Roy Miller, Keyston Randall, go on and on. Texas had that. You had it with Keandre Coburn and Moro Jomo in 2022. Obviously, 2 years ago, it was Sweat and Murphy. Last year, I think we all knew Alfred Collins had the potential to be, kind of that first team all-conference, all-American type guy. And we'd seen some flashes from Vernon Broughton. I don't see a surefire guy that can be that type of guy now. So that's where my concern is. Do you have enough diverse skill sets to where, based on opponents, you can kind of moneyball it and figure out, hey, this group of guys might play more this week, and maybe 1 week it's this group of guys. I don't know, but it's going to be a fascinating spring from the standpoint of how quickly can Myron Charles, Josiah Sharma, and we'll throw him in there, Justice Terry. How quickly can those guys get up to speed? And do they get up to speed, Rod, to the point where maybe they could change Kenny Baker, PK, and Sark, change their perception of what they need out of the portal? Do they need to go find a guy that we know can come in here and give us high leverage snaps right away? Or could they just take, hey, let's get an insurance policy in case we have an injury? So those young guys, I know that's a lot to ask for 2, really 3 true freshmen, because Justice Terry's in Kenny Baker's room, even though he's working some on the edge. It's a lot to ask for that group, but hey, if you're getting recruited to play defensive line at Texas, you should be recruiting guys that can come in and give you something right off the bat. All those guys I just mentioned were guys that could do that right off the bat. So yeah, we'll see. But it's a lack of a war daddy, Rod, that's got me concerned.
I think you're right. Even in my notes here, to that point, Jeff, do you have a guy that's a 3-down D tackle? You got a guy that you believe can be a force in the run game and also be someone that can help you as a pass rusher on later downs, right? You got a 3-down D tackle. And it can kind of go down, obviously go down the depth here at D tackle for them. But does it seem like me, is Cole Brevard the closest thing that they have right now to an every down D tackle, a guy that can be a run stuffer, a quality run stuffer on early downs, and also a plus pass rusher on later downs? Or are we sleeping on a young Alex January who could take a huge leap this year? Now, he didn't have enough snaps. This thing we know, too. We know they're going to have basically 4 guys they're going to kind of build this rotation around. And that's what happened last year, right? It was Bill Norton, Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, Jermaine Lole. That was their big 4. After that, there's significant drop-off in the snaps. And, CJ, I know you got some numbers on that. But the year before that, kind of the same thing, right? Byron Murphy, Torrance Sweat, Collins, Broughton, those were their 4. And I think that's kind of what they, as a defense, I think that's what they want to be able to lean on. 4 quality guys that they can trust in the rotation. And yes, there will be some specific skill sets. Some guys will be better pass rushers, like Vernon Broughton was. A little surprised last year. I thought Alfred Collins would be considered the better pass rusher. But when they broke out the NASCAR package, the D tackle they put in there was Vernon Broughton. Turns out pass rush win rate, he had a better pass rush win rate than Alfred Collins. Alfred Collins had a better stuff rate in terms of run stuff rate than Vernon Broughton. So, both of those guys had their strengths as players, but I do believe both of them could be plus players on every down, early downs and on later downs. So I'll throw it to you first, CJ. Who do you think are going to be the guys, number one, who can be those types of players or project to be those players? And then who's going to be the 4? The 4 that end up earning their reps in that rotation, because I think that's going to be the magic number. 4 guys, and then they'll, Alex January was the other guy that they liked last year, but he was young. That may be a Justice Terry this year. But who will be the 4 guys they can build around and know they can trust on early downs and on later downs too?
Yeah, I think the first guy specifically, you mentioned him there, Rod, is Cole Brevard out of Purdue. And look, Purdue was not a good football team last year, but they had some bright spots, right? Tight end Max Clare, who's now at Ohio State, was a bright spot. They have an offensive lineman who's expected to go in the top, 60, 70 picks in the draft as well. Brevard certainly fits that mold too. He's had 1,094 snaps in his career. He was on the field for almost 400 snaps last year alone. And we've gone over the 16-game snap counts for Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton. That's right around 450 to 500, right? Mm-hmm. So he played a lot of snaps last year for Purdue. Now, will he be expected to do that for Texas? Right now, I would say yes. I would say that he's going to be the elder statesman. Obviously, he has the most snaps in his career of anybody on this roster. Travis Shaw coming in second place with 620. So right now, you see the drop off from 1 to 2, and then from 3 to 4, which is Hero Canoe at Ohio State with 230 and Alex January with 96 last year. You see how considerable of a drop off that is. Yeah. Now, will that 4 be those 4 guys I just mentioned? Brevard, Shaw, January, and Canoe? Going into the spring, I say so. But I'm also expecting Texas to add another guy out of the portal. And what can a guy like Josiah Sharma or Myron Charles provide to this room? Look, again, Texas released, I'll just add this one last thing. Texas released a signing day roster of their signees. They also included some height and weights. How about 6'4", 348 pounds for Josiah Sharma out of Folsom, California? Myron Charles out of Florida, 6'3", 322. You take the 6 of those guys collectively combined, 326.4 pounds is the collective average. That's pretty good depth. That's pretty good mass on the interior. Now it's about finding the guys that can create those splash negative plays behind the line of scrimmage. Who are those guys right now? I think it's more a question mark. But Alex January if I can say any of the homegrown guys, he's probably the guy closest to being in that group without a doubt.
Yeah, there's two guys I'm looking at, Rod, not so much for the rotation, but to really I think it does impact your rotation, but I think more so it impacts what you need in the portal. Yeah, Travis Shaw was a big-time recruit coming out of high school, but he goes to North Carolina, and unfortunately, that tackling epidemic that was on the 40 during Mac Brown's last few years, it followed him to Chapel Hill because North Carolina was just not very good at all on defense Mac's last few years. So was Travis Shaw just a byproduct of just a horrible defense around him? And could it just be, hey, change of scenery, maybe you finally get that elite level production out of Travis Shaw? So he's kind of a wild card for me from that standpoint. The other guy, and CJ, you can speak more on him than I can, is Melvin Hills. I mean, I think we forget that Texas ended up, they signed 3 defensive linemen in 2024, lost one with Dontre Robinson when he ended up getting out of his national letter of intent after Bo Davis left for LSU. He ends up in Florida, but Melvin Hills stuck around, and Melvin Hills is still in this program. Very, very rarely now do we see like the traditional red shirt where you're going to be on the practice squad, you're not going to travel, etc. That was Melvin Hills last year. So, CJ, can we expect Melvin Hills to, I don't know, maybe get somewhere in that snap count Alex January had last year, where maybe he's at 80 to 100 snaps by the end of the regular season?
I think that would be the goal, right? Because again, Melvin Hills, I went over some of the heights and weights of this group right now. Melvin Hills at the beginning of last year was 6'3", 305. What did he come in at towards the end of the year was an unknown, right? Did he add to his frame? Did he get up to about 315? If he did, that's a great, start into this offseason where potentially he could touch 320, which is kind of that golden number given what we've seen over at Texas in previous years, right? Mara Ojimo was a little lighter. Vernon Broughton played around 315 to 318 at his Texas career as well. But to your point, he added some of that pass rushing juice that I don't think anybody else in that room had at the time. So for Melvin Hills to get on the field, to continue that developmental path, and also not necessarily be thrown into the fire because you just brought in some portal guys to help rejuvenate that room, I think it's huge. And also I'll add this, because I know that Melvin Hills has been a guy that's been forgotten a little bit. I totally spaced on him just mentioning who was in the room previously. There were SEC teams calling his number this past offseason within the last 2 months saying, hey, we've got a spot for you. We'd like for you to at least take a look into the portal and see what might be available for you, because we like what we see. Texas, fortunately, has been able to hold on to him so far. What can he do in the spring to kind of create a name for himself? That's going to be just as big as the early enrollee freshman as well.
Yeah, one of the things I think with this group I wonder about is, Texas has benefited of having, some war daddies on the defensive front, right? In the interior defensive line the last couple of years. Obviously, T'Vondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, both being in that category. But you have players that can make splash plays from the interior D-line, right? Vernon Broughton, we saw him take over drives at times. Alfred Collins make some splash plays from the interior D-line. And to Jeff's point earlier, I'm not sure how many guys I see in the interior D-line being able to do that. Now, you didn't get that really from Bill Norton or Jermaine Lole. They were guys that pretty much played a specific role on your interior D-line, just to be run stuffers a lot of times on early downs. And I think it took they probably didn't have as much on their plate, but you didn't get as much added value from those guys in splash plays. And I feel like this group, and I'm not saying it's anything disrespectful to Jeff's point, I don't know if you'll have as many splash plays, talking about pressures and quarterback hurries and QB hits, and maybe even tackles for loss as you got previously last season. But maybe you don't need it. Maybe because your edges now, you're gonna get so much kind of havoc from those guys on the outside and the edges, and to CJ's point, even maybe from the linebacker position as well, with a guy like Spence, and then of course Anthony Hill's one of your better pass rushers. Is it possible we're in a different that we could be in a different situation this season with the interior line where they can be more role players and less havoc splash players and difference makers, because they'll be surrounded on that front seven by a lot of those guys who can they'll make up the difference in splash plays and havoc plays. We just need you guys to make sure that you are gap sound, and that you guys make sure you're fundamentally sound, so that we don't have a liability inside. Keep them off of Anthony Hill, keep them off of Anthony Hill, keep them off of the foul. You keep those guys clean, we'll make all the plays that need to be made. We just need you guys to play a certain role. Is that possible we were looking at here potentially?
We talked about this on Football Theory last week, Rod, and I think it's more so going to apply in 25 than it did in 24. Because like you said, you had guys that you knew could win, right?
Dude.
I think this year, the disruption by the interior D-line, I think it's going to be more manufactured disruption than organic disruption. I think there'll be more games, more slants, moving guys into different shades, pre-snap movement. You'll have to put a little more funk in there this year than you had the last couple of years. And from Kenny Baker going from year 1 to year 2, I think you have to put a little bit more in that. If you're going to get organic disruption, I'm still looking at Justice Terry. And the word on the street is, from what sources have told us and On Texas Football, Justice Terry, his football IQ, that football character we talk about, Rod, it sounds like he's not only asking a lot of questions, he's asking a lot of the right questions. He's going to some of the offensive linemen and asking them about hand placement and technique and blocking schemes and punch and being good at the point of attack and getting off blocks. So the fact that he's supposedly doing that behind the scenes, that leads me to believe, hey, this kid has a plan that I'm going to put my best foot forward every day, because in 3 years, I want to be on my way to the National Football League. There are just some guys that are built that way. And maybe Justice Terry is one of those guys. So I think you can have some organic disruption, Rod. And Justice Terry, I think, is one of those guys. I think the NASCAR package is tailor-made for him, for what his skill set is and where he's at right now. Plus, in a NASCAR situation, you're only going to really ask him to do one thing. Hey,
exactly.
10 years back and get after the quarterback. Should be easier for a young guy to do that. But I think it's going to be more manufactured disruption if the interior D-line gets it rather than organic.
I agree. Yeah, that's a great point, Jeff. I agree with what you're saying about that too. And it feels like to me that if we're just saying who has the advantage in the competition to get the most reps right now, that we're looking at Cole Brevard and Alex January as two of those guys. I like the wild card assessment from Jeff about Travis Shaw being a wild card, Melvin Hill being a wild card as well. So we talked about all these guys. Have we talked about Hero Canoe enough? Is this still a developmental project? Hero Canoe coming in. Is this someone that CJ, we're looking at developmentally down the line to help you add depth and, hey, maybe one day ascend to a more disruptive role? Where does he, in your opinion, where does he sit in kind of this competition at interior D-line?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. 6'4" or 6'5", 305 is what he was listed as at Ohio State. Played 124 snaps in 2024, 230 for his career. He had 32 snaps in the college football playoff. So scratching that surface at Ohio State, tough thing to do. Obviously, Texas a little bit more of an opportunity to get on the field at that defensive line position with its current state. So I see why he made the jump. Hero Canoe is also still rather new to football for a guy entering year 4 at a major university, right? So he has not played a whole lot of football. He moved to the United States, kind of took on football late in his high school career. You see the athleticism, and I think that's what Texas kind of, we saw pursuit of in the portal this past season was former 5-star Travis Shaw and a guy in Hero Canoe where you take the chance on him regardless of former production because you see the first step. And so that'll be really interesting. Kenny Baker, we've talked to him. We've talked about him in regards to what he looks for in guys that he can mold. Athletic freaks are among that fold for him. I mean, look, Alfred Collins very much fits the bill. We did not see what we saw in year 5 from him and really any of 1 through 4 for him. So can he get that out of a Hero Canoe? We'll see. Travis Shaw, another guy who I'm expecting it to be January and Brevard in your front line, but Travis Shaw with that 5-star pedigree, that first step, I would argue, is as good as anybody that Texas has had on campus since maybe Byron Murphy. So not too far, but that first step screams 5-star. What can he do beyond that is going to be interesting. Same for Hero Canoe.
Yeah. If you don't have a war daddy, which we were talking about earlier, Rod, if you don't have a war daddy, I think to survive not just survive, but thrive in the SEC, I think if you don't have quality, you got to turn up the dial on quantity. So I think if you can just come at people in waves and constantly have fresh defensive linemen rotating into the game, and at some point, once everybody's got a lather, now Kenny Baker, if you're Kenny Baker, you're Pete Kwiatkowski, now you can mix and match and figure, okay, our best combo is going to be, like CJ saying, if it's Cole Brevard and Alex January, all right, then in crunch time, those guys are going to get more of the snaps.
Right.
Maybe this week, maybe it's Travis Shaw and Alex January. I don't know, but that's going to be the beauty of it is if you think about Texas in 2022, right?
Yeah.
Like you had Keandre Coburn and Moro Ajomo, and those guys could make plays, but neither one of those guys was like a first team all-conference, all-American type. They were just so dang deep that they could just come at you in waves. And that's one of the reasons why Texas improved so much on defense. So I don't know where the ceiling is for this group, but I think the floor can get raised if you can legitimately be about, 6, 7, maybe 8 guys deep of guys that you feel comfortable putting in and just keep coming at people in waves. So that way, in the fourth quarter, when it comes to crunch time and that offensive line, when they, guys got their hands on their knees and they're dragging a little bit, whoever your top pairing is, they're fresh and they're ready to go. So maybe you just combat, I don't know, Rod, maybe I'm wrong, but I just think you have to combat the quality issue with quantity.
I love that idea. It's a great point, Jeff. Good stuff, guys. All right, before we end our position preview here, let's thank our good friends over at Vaughn Lane. I've actually got a chance to travel Vaughn Lane a few times to Houston and to Dallas, so I'm actually really happy they're now sponsor here at On Texas Football. Now, I know you've tried flying in between the 3 major cities in Texas, Austin, Dallas, and Houston, and it's stressful, right? No matter what you're talking about. You're talking about flying being a hassle, security lines, the packed gates, delayed flights all the time, all for what? An hour trip, 50-minute trip. We know it's not worth it, right? That stress is, right, it's not worth the hassle of getting on a plane to travel just in between the 3 major cities in Texas, and driving isn't much better at all either. You ever tried a same-day round trip? That can be really stressful, just the lost productivity because you're driving, getting in traffic. We know that traffic can be a hassle and very stressful as well. And the lost productivity can be a bit of a pain. Vaughn Lane changes everything, folks, and they'll change all the way you think about travel in the state of Texas. It's luxury regional bus travel, what some call a private jet on wheels. My wife talks about that all the time. You can sing into it like a plush leather seat. Fairly comfortable, perfect for those naps, all right, in between trips. But also you stay connected. They got complimentary Wi-Fi. They also have complimentary snacks and drinks on every trip. There are a few select departures actually that have meals and delicious meals on those select departures. You also, if you need to freshen up, they have hot towel service. They also have eye masks and pillows and blankets. Trust me, folks, it is first class service on Vaughn Lane. The Vaughn Lane team takes care of every detail so you can sit back, unwind, and enjoy the most comfortable travel experience on the road today. And if you're a business traveler, like I said, a lot of you all out there, you can really recapture your productivity. If you're a leisure traveler, just traveling for a family event or traveling to a certain concert or maybe a football game, you can sit back, relax, and be pampered with Vaughn Lane's first class travel, folks, without hassle. So whether you're traveling for business or traveling personally, you can see for yourself. Visit VaughnLane.com. That's VONLANE. That's VaughnLane.com. Use the promo code OTF25 for $20 off your first trip with Vaughn Lane. You tried once, you'll be hooked like me. When I'm traveling in between Houston and traveling between Austin, if I've traveled to Dallas or Fort Worth, I've traveled Vaughn Lane several times, and my wife loves it too. You'll be a big fan of it. So thank you very much to VaughnLane.com for sponsoring our position previews and being a part of the On Texas Football family. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for the expertise and all the nuggets of wisdom. We appreciate that. Thank you to VaughnLane.com for sponsoring our position previews, and thank you to each and every one of you out there for watching and for listening. And until next time, for Jeff and for CJ and for Matthew behind the scenes, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Hook 'em Horns.